Welcome to Quilting on the Side, the podcast where we uncover the secrets to turning your passion for quilting into a profitable side hustle.
I'm Tori from the Quilt Patch by Tori.
And I'm Andi from True Blue Quilts. And together, we're your co-hosts on this exciting journey of creativity, entrepreneurship, and all things quilting.
We're here to help you navigate the world of quilt pattern design, course creation, digital marketing, and running an online quilt business. We've been through the ups and downs ourselves, so we know what it takes to make money from your favorite hobby.
That's right, Tori. We're going to share our experiences on how we've grown our businesses while balancing family with other paying work responsibilities. It's not always easy, but it's definitely possible.
Welcome everyone to Quilting on the Side. Today, Andi and I, Tori, are going to talk about quilt-alongs. So we want to start off with what and the why of quilt-along. So Andi, what is a quilt-along?
I understand a quilt-along, just like the name implies, that everybody is working on the same pattern and they are going to finish within a specified time period. So whether it's a weekly or monthly segment of the quilt, the designer or the producer of the quilt-along is going to put out those milestone elements of the pattern and say, okay, now we're working on this part, and then progress to a finish where you can celebrate all of these wonderful finished quilts.
Definitely. And I like how you said it could be weekly, it could be monthly. It kind of depends on the project and how what timeline you want to take with that.
Yeah. And have you ever participated in quilt-alongs?
I've hosted one. I participated in some smaller projects, but I could never really, I didn't have the bandwidth to apply myself to like a long quilt-along, but I have hosted one, and I have been a part of smaller like bag making ones. Like I made a little project bag.
Yeah.
Have you done a quilt-along before?
I have seen a lot of them online, obviously, and yes, for a while I was part of the Quilt Block Mania, which is kind of a quilt-along, but it's just a collection of blocks, so it's not necessarily put them together in a finished quilt. Mm-hmm. There are some other sampler type quilts that I have seen run as quilt-alongs, and occasionally I will participate in those. They are great ways to collaborate with other quilt designers, and I do have a block of the month available for shop owners in 2025. I designed a quilt for the Island Batik Fall-Winter catalog, and I'm excited for that to be out in the world.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that one. So we talked a little bit about block of the month versus quilt-along, and there definitely is some crossover there. And I'm throwing this question at you out of the blue. So do you think there's a difference between a quilt-along and a block of the month? And what do you think that difference might be?
I think the difference is the level of community and sharing, possibly online. Block of the month is really rooted in the fabric stores, getting customers to come back and pick up their fabric in the store, make the project at home. Quilt-alongs, I think, are really unique to the online space and evolved as we started sharing on various platforms. You know, I remember 10, 15 years ago when Flickr was the main website for sharing photos, and then everybody jumped on Instagram, and you see quilt-alongs on YouTube now. So, you know, it's like you said, there's a lot of crossover. I guess I just see the block of the month is more for fabric kits, possibly, and then quilt-alongs are just, you know, here's the pattern, let's all make it with what we have on hand. But they definitely can run in very similar manners.
No,
So
I agree. I agree. I think that a quilt along has more of the community aspect, like you were saying. And then I also think as a designer, it's a little more hands off to do a block of the month. If you want it to be hands off, I feel like that could be the route to go if you, again, want to be hands off and just kind of to provide a block every month and just say, here it is. Whereas a quilt along, I think when you promote something as a quilt along, you are providing some community, some instruction, something else to kind of go along with the pattern.
yeah, for sure. So that leads us right into the why of why host a quilt along. When do you see quilt alongs crop up, Tori?
I see a lot starting, especially if the designer is planning for a year-long quilt along. They start a lot in January. There are some that start like in the summer and go from like summer to summer, so you could even plan it that way. Um, but I see a lot around fall to get ready for Christmas. So you have that community aspect. You help them keep accountable and get their project done before Christmas. So that way they have a gift to give. So I've seen that a lot. But I think the biggest why as a designer is that you can utilize the fun of a community to help with profit. So if you're providing a community, you're providing some instruction, and then that part of it could be free, and the pattern is what they're paying for. So they pay for the pattern, and I think we're going to get into this too. So I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but that's the why that I reach for is why as a business do I want to host a quilt along? It's for the community, but it's also and it's more fun. You get to
Mhm.
really get in there, get warm with your audience, and really have some fun with the quilters, but also for profit where you're driving sales up for a particular pattern.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
I see quilt alongs as a great launch tool marketing that when you have a brand new pattern, you can drum up a lot of excitement right at the beginning by launching your pattern and then maybe a couple weeks later starting the quilt along so that you continue that excitement for the new pattern right when it hits the market. So that's a good technique.
And it's good continuous marketing too, because you're sharing about it like every week or every month, depending on how you've laid it out, so that you're continuously marketing it as you're going through the quilt along.
Exactly. And it doesn't, like you said, continuous marketing, it doesn't have to be a brand new pattern. You can revive any of the patterns in your library to host a quilt along. So that's a good effort.
Yeah, I think that
And
leads
that
us right
leads me
into
right into where to find patterns. How do you decide what's going to be the basis of your quilt along?
So I think that a good pattern needs to have some variety. You need to be able to pick and choose the blocks that'll fit in the time frame, right? So if we have a repetitive block over and over again, it may not be the right kind of pattern for a quilt along. You want some variation. So like week 1 is this, week 2 is this. You could also do it by row. If you have that repeating pattern, like a block that just repeats several times, you could do that row by row. So those are different ways. I love the fact that you said get an old pattern, because I think that is what we always think we have to have something new. But if you have a pattern that you love that did well 10 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and you're seeing a pattern or something that's been popular that's coming out that matches that pattern, like bring it back out. Do a little revival of it. Maybe remake it in a new product or a new fabric line or not. Just keep it the same and just launch it as I'm going to host a quilt along and let's join me in creating this quilt together and reusing what you already have.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the perfect time to mention our sponsor for this episode, which is Electric Quilt, the makers of the EQ8 software system, which is a great place to start planning your quilt for a quilt along because they have a huge library of blocks that you can choose 6, 8, 12 blocks to make a sampler, design it all in EQ8. It gives you the fabric requirements. You can easily color for multiple colorways of a quilt and give your audience some options there. And it just is a fabulous tool. So if you want to get in on EQ8, please use our affiliate link in the show notes. So once you have a pattern picked out or designed, you're ready to launch your quilt along, Tori, what tips do you have for running the quilt along? What are some key elements? You mentioned some possibly having prizes for participants.
Right. So we were talking about sponsors, right? So one way to get people interested is not only to get excitement maybe over a new pattern or a pattern that you're bringing back out, but also getting sponsors involved and providing prizes. So you'll see that a lot of quilt-alongs provide prizes. They typically don't pull that from their inventory. They typically go and ask for sponsorship. So with my quilt-along, I reached out to all kinds of quilting companies. I reached out to individual designers and I just offered, hey, do you want to do a giveaway every week for this quilt along? I got back quite a few yeses, more than I anticipated. I reached out to a batting company and I think it was Warm and Natural, and they provided batting that I could just give away, like a whole box of it. It was amazing. They were like the I need to like pull up the exact name of that company, but I'll go reach it when you're answering. But we've got or research it while you're answering. But I also reached out to bigger fabric companies who provided a bundle or a gift card. No, I didn't reach out to Riley Blake. It was the Fat Quarter Shop provided a gift card. So just reaching out and asking and letting them know what you're doing. And you want to make sure you're doing this way ahead of time. So like give them a few months to prepare. That way they can get it into their calendar, right? Because they plan months in advance. These bigger companies, they definitely have a longer timeline they need to plan for. So you want to reach out. I was reaching out maybe 2 months in advance, and some of them still were too close. So I might even go as far as saying 3 months in advance, maybe further if you can, if you've already got that planned. And just asking, hey, I'm running this quilt along. Here's a few graphics I'm going to share. Here's the quilt. And I'm reaching out for sponsorship so I can give away prizes for these weeks. And you could give them the schedule. You could give them, as much information as you have 3 months in advance and then see what they say. And I did get some no's and I got some good lucks and I got a lot of yeses. And it was great to have. I had a 12-week, I believe it was 12 weeks. It might have been 10 or 12. It was pretty long quilt along. And I was able to give away something most of those weeks. I think I filled out 8 weeks with sponsorship. So I only had to dig up 2 things from my inventory or my stash, because I did give away, I think I gave away a jelly roll one day. That I had, and it was really fun, and I was able to also collaborate with these other companies. Andi, have you ever done that where you had prizes for a quilt along?
I have, and I have usually done the sponsorship or the prize package from my own inventory. So as I have shared multiple times, I was an Island Boutique ambassador, and as part of the ambassador program, they gifted us several little, fabric bundles, jelly rolls, things like that, that then I could use as giveaways. If you put, go to your local quilt shop and see if they'll donate, just some notions are always good for giveaway options. Thread packages. I'm trying to think, you mentioned having jelly rolls and things. You're not going to want to give away a pattern because people have just purchased the pattern to participate in the quilt along. So it makes sense to think of prizes that will be useful for the sewer to use as the quilt along continues. Maybe one of the final prizes is the amount of backing fabric that they may need, and that way it doesn't have to be the specific fabric that you may be promoting with your quilt along, but it could be a coordinate, something that's easily available. Like you said, gift cards to quilt shops are a great prize option.
I
Notion
collaborated with
bundles. And just like you said, reach out to some of those major companies. And this Q4 of the year is a perfect time because they're winding down their current promotions and they're planning for the future. So they may be able to give you some promotions for upcoming events.
And don't discount reaching out to smaller companies too, or just one-on-ones. I had 2 long armors actually give. I had a long armor who said that she would do the quilt along with me, help promote it. And then at the end, she gave away a free edge to edge. And what that did for her was she had a quilt that she could experiment with because she had just gotten this brand new software. So she was trying to figure it out. So she's like, this will give me a great opportunity to play with the imaging part where she could overlay different quilting motifs and experiment. So it gave her that. So there was a give and a take there, which was great. So don't discount reaching out to smaller ones too, because we could get free long arming for your company, or you could get some kind of other collaboration, which is really cool. So the batting company, I just looked it up. So the batting company that was really supportive was Dream Batting.
Yeah,
They were
I
amazing.
love Quilter's Dream.
Quilter's
They have
Dream.
a great selection of battings, and I use Hobbs a lot, and they have a wide range of products. So there's lots of batting companies out there. So reach out. That's another one that you don't have to only have one sponsor for one type of thing. You can get multiple quilt shops to donate gift cards. You can get multiple batting companies. You can get multiple long armors. Those are all great options to sponsor quilt alongs. So we've talked a little bit about running the quilt along in terms of choosing a design and getting your sponsors, but then the nitty gritty is the actual delivery of this, which means you need to be on email and you need to be on social media. So which of those do you want to tackle first, Tori?
Well, let's see. So there's benefits and drawbacks to both. Like as back end work, it's hefty. A quilt along is a lot to prepare for. It's a lot to plan for. It's a lot to show up for, especially a longer one where you're showing up for multiple months, possibly the entire year. So you want to plan out. I always talk about energy. So you want to make sure you've got the energy for this and to plan and do as much as possible before it starts so that you can show up live. You could tweak things that may need to be tweaked and things like that. But yeah, email, I would suggest having both email and social. So whether you want to host it on Facebook, whether you want to and if you're hosting it on Facebook, I would suggest you do a group. I feel like that involves more community, more accountability. And you can do a public group to where others can find it as well. You don't have to keep it a private group instead of hosting it on a page. And it seemed to get confusing when I had both the Instagram going and the Facebook page going. So I would suggest keeping it to a group, maybe a public group, maybe a private group, depending on what you want to do. And then maybe even choosing one or the other. So Facebook or Instagram, if you're going to choose a social. But I would share every single week, even if you're mostly doing it through email. If it's mostly in a public or private group on Facebook, I would still share on Instagram to get people interested because we do have a lot of quilters on Instagram. But yeah, you want to make sure that you've got your emails scheduled week to week to week. You're not missing that cutoff point because they're going to be looking for them every whatever day you decide to send out. So if it's every Friday, you want to make sure they're going out every Friday. You can again schedule all of that in advance so that you're not there Friday morning typing out the email, getting it ready to send. Which guilty, I feel like I've done that before, but. If you have it planned ahead of time, you've got a lot more energy to show up, a lot more excitement to show up, and it doesn't feel like it's dragging you down, and you can still run your business on the back end. So one thing I did that was super helpful was I actually hired a VA for my quilt along. So it was just a couple hours a week just to make the graphics, like just make some graphics for me so it all looks the same. And then I actually had her hold on to the physical giveaways. So she had the prizes and she took the pictures for the prizes and she mailed them out. So all I was paying for was those couple hours of work that she was doing a week and the shipping for all the prizes. So she didn't have to pay for anything of it, but I was letting her handle that part and it saved me so much time and so much energy to just go in there, download the picture she created, write the little week one, this is what we're doing, and send it. And it was so good. And then I also pre-recorded 2 or 3 short videos that would go in those emails. And I just put those up on YouTube, an unlisted link. So they can even share those if they wanted to, but unlisted link. And then you can even do that as a public video. So they can always find it and that can promote your quilt along later down the road too. So that's the things I did to kind of prepare for hosting it on email and Instagram. And then I have a few more things to share, but I want to give you a chance to share. So what have you done on the back end to kind of help prepare, and how would you prepare for a quilt along?
Yeah, I just think that as much as you can draft and schedule ahead of time is the key to running things smoothly. That having things pre-planned, pre-recorded, drafted, scheduled, that allows you to manage the day-to-day that crops up with quilt alongs and really be involved in the community and providing good customer service, because that way you're just focused on the process and what's actually happening. You're not as worried about all the behind the scenes pieces. So definitely take the time. It If you get in the flow, you can crank out, 6 or 8 emails for a quilt along in just a few hours. So definitely take the time to do that. And the great thing about quilt alongs and writing those emails is that once you've done it that first time, you then can repurpose, just drop in the new pattern, drop in the new, you've got the skeleton that you can dress up for future events. So that is a great tip to get those emails and those social posts. And I love the fact that you found a VA. What a brilliant use of your resources is to, offload those tasks that can really be draining and then free yourself up to do the design and the implementation.
Yes, definitely. It was key, honestly, to it going off without a hitch, because that she did, like I said, she only needed a couple hours a week. All she did was some designs, put it up for me. She took care of the shipping part of it. All I had to do was I could show up fully because I had her taking care of those few hours worth of work on that end.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. Um, any other tips and tricks for running the quilt along?
So another thing I've seen, and I actually hosted a free workshop, but you could also host and I think about it kind of like tiered options for quilt along. You could do completely free where they are just getting emails every week. They're joining the Facebook group. They're good to go. You could host every week have a live sit and sew where you sit and sew together, and that could be low cost, or that could be part of a bundle to go with a full-on workshop that teaches them the skills they need. So you can do a tiered quilt along where you can say, here's the basic, here's the intermediate, or here's the basic and advanced, and then like here's the advanced, where they can pay to be a part of a workshop and really get their hands in and learn from you as the designer, as the teacher, to create this quilt, especially if it's something that has the more technicalities to it, like foundation paper piecing.
Mhm.
And just jumping back to sponsors really quick, I also thought about giving away the tools you might need for the quilt. So I want to throw that out there, like a quarter with the quarter
Add a
ruler.
quarter ruler for paper
Yes,
piecing. Yeah.
exactly, like the add a quarter ruler. But yeah, if you have something that's more technical, offering a workshop to go along with it or a weekly sit and sew can be a really great benefit to not only encouraging people to join the quilt along in the first place, but also can raise your profit and give them an upsell.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely the added bonus of a quilt along is hopefully all of these ways that you can make it a profitable venture, because it can seem daunting for the time and energy that's involved in planning this, whether it's a month long project or a full year, 12-month quilt along, that you definitely want to be able to get some bang for your bucks and the return on investment for what you've put into it. So reaching out to those sponsors, networking, building your community of resources, partnering with local quilt shops, there's a lot of benefits there. And if you can tie in physical products, that's a great boost as well. Yeah,
So is
so we'd
there
like to hear from our audience any questions that you have, or share your experiences with quilt alongs. We do have some prior episodes where we've talked to people that have run quilt-alongs. I'm thinking specifically of Rachel Miller, Journey Back Quilts. She has built a very successful business listening to her community and running quilt-alongs when the interest arises. And
Julie Walks, during our launch episodes, that's what she launched, was a block of the month. So there's some crossover there, but she had some really great tips on working with shops and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend giving those 2 episodes another listen. So,
and Jen from PB&J, where she talked
of
about
course,
being able to simplify her block of the months. Again, some crossover there. And a great
yeah.
one to go listen to.
Yeah, so we've given you lots of ideas. Don't feel overwhelmed with doing any, thinking you have to do all of this, that, oh, to be a successful designer, I have to run a quilt along. That's not the case. It's just an option, and we'd love to hear how it works out for you. So until next time, hope you're having fun and doing a little quilting on the side. What a great discussion. If you enjoyed this episode of Quilting on the Side, please leave us a review on whichever platform you're listening. It can be iTunes, Spotify, or even our YouTube channel.
And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next chat. Until then, remember to have fun in your business and do a little quilting on the side.